Hey everybody, welcome to this demonstration of the Dremio Data Lakehouse platform. Again, with Dremio's unified analytics, SQL query engine, and data lakehouse management features, you're going to have everything you need to really be able to operate with your data lake as a center of your data gravity in a, data lakehouse type execution, meaning it feels like a data warehouse, but on your data lake. And bottom line, this is going to make lives for your data analysts much easier because your data is going to be much more self-service and they're going to be able to get requests fulfilled much more quickly. And it's going to be easier for your data engineer because a lot of those requests they can execute very quickly, and some of them they won't have to execute themselves because self-service. Then we're going to show you that today. So here I have a Trello board that basically is representative of the project management tool that any data engineer might be using, whether it's a Jira or Asana or any of the like that they may be using to keep track of outstanding requests that they have for work on their data, okay, to provide to the data analysts. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you some of these tickets and show you sort of how I would work through them as a data engineer in Dremio, and just to kind of illustrate some of Dremio's features and sort of a use case and use form. But let's go through them, okay? So the first ticket we're going to have is that we have two tables. We have a table of employees and a table of departments. And one of our analysts has asked to be able to have access to a view on these data sets that basically shows the name of employees with the departments that they're in. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go create that view in Dremio, which again won't end up duplicating the data. So again, we'll walk through this. So I'm going to just move this over to in progress, and let's go put that together. So now addressing in our first ticket, essentially what happens is that right now, again, in my Dremio dashboard, I can see that I have all my sources that I have currently connected, and I'm currently under my admin account. I can see that I have all these different sources. Okay, you generally will have a default catalog. Okay, and again, Dremio has these integrated Nessie-based catalogs that have that sort of that Git for data features set. But you always have one that's sort of your default catalog, and you're able to add more. So you see here, I have more catalogs that I have in my account for either organizational purposes. Maybe I'm doing a data mesh and I want to kind of group, different domains data into different catalogs so that we can be separately governed and things like that. But I also have like object storages, databases, and there's a whole bevy of sources I can connect. And I can even connect a Dremio. So right now I'm on Dremio Cloud. I can even connect a Dremio software cluster, making any data connectors available in the Dremio software world available to query on cloud. Okay, so you have sharing between Dremio clusters, which opens up all sorts of possibilities for data sharing. So what I've done is that I have a special section that I will be working out of today. So again, this is our February demonstration. So here I have my Dremio demo for February. So I have this folder within my catalog, okay, a namespace, and I've already populated with a departments table and an employees table. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to want to create a view that joins these tables. There's a couple different ways I can go there. I can click here, and this will take me directly to my SQL editor. I could click on one of these tables and begin working from the SQL editor from there. I'm going to go straight to our SQL editor right over here, okay, the SQL runner. And then from here, what's going to happen is that this allows me to write SQL very easily. It's going to have sort of, it has syntax highlighting. So again, if I type in like select star, so you can see there's like color highlighting. And again, if I type something wrong, so if I said, select all, so now here I forgot the word from. So I have like the error highlighting that allows me to kind of catch errors before I run my queries. So I can see here and I go, oh, okay, from, awesome. On top of that, I have a list of all my data sets over here, so I can easily copy them. So in this case, I might be wanting to work with those two tables that we created. So here, Dremio demo, I can find that table, copy it over in here, so that way I get the fully qualified name of the table easily in there without having to type out the whole thing. So that's also really makes life a lot easier. Again, I have a quick function lookup. I can switch between light mode and dark mode. Okay, I get some fun keyboard shortcuts. I had this generative AI feature where I can actually generate SQL using generative AI. We'll demonstrate that a little bit later. And most importantly, I have this context switch. This is great because what it does, it allows me to specify like a folder in a catalog or a data set in any of my sort of data sources that I want the context of the query to be run in. This allows me to avoid having to type out the fully qualified name for every data set. So what I can do is I can set this to the folder we're going to work out of. So I'm going to sit here and say it's demos 2024, February, our Dremio demo for this month. And that's going to be the context. So basically, anytime I put a name of a table, it's assumed that it's in that folder, in that context. I can even specify what branch if I'm using the branching feature of the catalog. Now, in this case, what I'm going to want to do is I already have the query I need to do this join kind of already saved. So I can actually pre-save queries that I might run very often or use as query templates as scripts. Okay, so in this case, I have it right over here. Okay, and here's the query. And now in this query, what I'm doing is I am creating a view, which is going to be called raw department and employees. So it's just basically a straight up join of the two tables for raw department and employees. And basically we say, hey, that view should be the result of this query. Okay, simple enough. So now I can just run that query. And again, notice I didn't have to write the fully qualified namespace, okay, because it's going to do it in the context that I set over here. Okay, so it makes these scripts really easily and reusable because all I have to do is make sure I have my context set instead of putting the fully qualified namespace every single time. So now I can run this query, and that is going to create our view, which is now done. So now the view has been created. So now if I go back over here, I can go back to that folder in my catalog where I have that particular data set. Okay, here we go, Dremio demo. And there it is. So I can see right there, raw department employees. Okay, and cool. Okay, so now if I click on that view, I can see if I run the query, I can see I'm going to have a join of all the two data sets that I can see right there. Wonderful. And what I want to do is give access to that to other users. So I can head back over here. Okay, and I can go back to that data set, 2024, Feb, Dremio demo. And then if I click on this gear icon, I can click over here, the privileges, and I can select a user. So here I have several different users in my account. So I'll say, hey, here to user one. I want to say, hey, I want to add privileges to them. Okay, I add them in there, and I can choose what level of privilege they have. So we have role-based governance. So I can choose whether they just have the ability to read, do they have the ability to write, do they have the ability to see what reflections are available on there, which is a topic we'll talk about later. Can they change the reflections that are on there? Are they able to grant permissions to this table? Okay, you have different levels of control. And on top of it, we also have column and row masking. So that way I can make sure that certain users cannot see all the data in a particular data set if I don't want them to see that. Great for protecting like PII and things like that. So, okay, and now that we have that raw department employees view, again, what happened is that the ticket requested just a listing of employees with their departments. So I'm going to go back over here. I can open up this view. Okay, and again, before we created the view with SQL, okay, so I used SQL to create the view, which is totally fine. But I can also just create the view from here using just by querying the actual data set. Okay, so I can go over here and say, hey, I want to run the query, okay, and I can then take a look at all the columns. And also you can see that the columns are listed right over here to the right, so I have that for easy reference. And then I can just modify this query to kind of give what was asked for in my ticket, which is just they have the name of the employee and the department name, which actually is going to show up as name here, okay? And then again, but I want to give that a more declarative, better name. So I'm going to say, hey, that name field as department, okay? And if now I can just do a quick test run of it, just make sure that it gives me the information I expected. And there it is, yep, for the name of the employee and the department. And then what I could also do is I can just really click save view as here. So I could save this as a script so that I can run that SQL later, or I could save it as a view so that way it saves more like a data set. So if I click save view, I can then just choose where I want to put that. So once again, I choose 2024, February, Dremio demo, give it a name. So we'll call it like employee name department. And then I can hit save. And see, now we have that view available. But now if let's to confirm that, I can go back over here, go back to demos, go back to 2024, go back to February, go back to Dremio demo, and there it is, employee name department. Okay, I run the query, and again, once again, what I could do from here is then grant permissions to whoever I want to grant it to. Okay, so pretty easy for me to curate the views that were requested of me. Okay, so now that that's done, let's move on to our next ticket. Now what's happened is that that same employee has come back in with another request. They realized that they didn't want that first name and last name field to be two separate fields. They'd really prefer the full employee name as one column along with the department as a second column. So there's a couple different ways we can handle this. So let's begin to talk about that. Let's put this ticket in progress and let's get to it. So now for this ticket, the problem is that it turns out that the employee wasn't really happy with the view that we created. Okay, it has the name of the employee in the department, but they didn't want a first name and a last name field. They really wanted a full name field. Okay, now the beauty of this is technically, if you're using the Dremio Lakehouse platform, I shouldn't be receiving this ticket because this is something where self-service kicks in. Okay, so if I'm that data analyst looking at this view, I can go and do this myself. There's a couple different features you have when you need to derive new columns from the data that you have. I could go over here and I see I have a lot of different wizards to help me just do basic things like do group bys if I'm trying to do a join. You have convert data type if you need to convert a field from one data type to another. Convert casing, trim white space, do a calculated field if you need to do like some, change like miles to kilometers. And all this can be done without, and it'll generate the SQL for you. So even for your least technical users, they can actually get a lot of self-service work done here. Okay. And to make it even easier, we have our generative AI tool. So I can go over here and say, you know what? I can drag this data set in here. So in this case, I will go look that up in the data sets that I have access to. So February, Dremio demo, employee name and department. Okay. Bottom line, say, hey, I want to see the full name and last name field as a single field named full name, and I still want the department field as is. Okay, so there I've kind of described what I wanted, and I can hit generate. Okay, and then it's going to just basically generate a query. Okay, and then I can just kind of examine it. This looks correct. Okay, only difference is I probably want to remove that last name. Okay, so not perfect. Again, it's generative AI, but I can now go in here and I can insert. Okay, and basically I can just remove this last name field because that's redundant. Okay, and here I'm going to have the result that I want. Okay, object employee name, department. Oh, I got to set the context. Again, if I don't set a context here, then it expects the fully qualified name. So in this case, I have to make sure I go over here, set the context to our folder that we're working out of, which is right here. And if I run that query again, we should be good to go. Okay, and there we go. See, full name, department, wonderful. And again, this is something that the analyst or data scientist could have done on their own. They wouldn't have to wait for a request to get this done. Okay, and then what they can do is they can save this as another view for themselves. So I can go click Save as View. Okay, and then again, choose that same location. So Demos 2024, Feb, Dremio demo. Okay, and then we'll call this like My Custom View. Okay, and that analyst would have that view for themselves. And then to be able to use that without necessarily having to wait like a week to go for all the other data engineering requests to be completed before their request came up in the queue. Okay, so now they're good to go. Okay, so it's simple as that. Okay, so again, you're trying to see that self-service nature of Dremio. Okay, so now that that ticket is complete, we can move on to our next ticket, where what happened is, again, the same employee has come with another request because it's still not quite perfect. In this case, they realized that, they could have used another column from the original data sets in this view. So they want us to go back and add the budget field into this table. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this over. So we're going to begin executing this, and let's go handle this. So we got another request from that analyst saying that they would really like us to add that budget column to the view that we gave them access to. Because again, that original view that we gave them access to only had the first name, last name, and the department. Okay, and we never gave them permission to the full join, just permission to that view. So they only have access to those three columns currently. So this is something we are going to have to fix as a data engineer. Fortunately, it's pretty easy. Okay, so from here in Dremio, Okay, I can just go to that view that I had created. 2024 Feb Dremio demo. So again, we gave them access to this particular view right here. So I can click here, this little edit pen to, well, edit the view. Okay, and that's going to take me to this screen where I can actually see sort of the original SQL query for me to work from. Okay, I'll open up the little information column so that I can see the things. Okay, but now what I can do is I can just kind of add the budget column over here and run it just to make sure that it works. Okay, and then we get all the fields that we expected. Okay, the name, and then here we go. Oops, I put budget in the wrong place, so that way I had to turn to the department field. So you see, I could run that, and then now I just do that, and then make sure I put budget all the way at the end over here. Okay, I can just run that again. Okay, and there we go. I see budget there as the fourth column. So now what I can do is I can just resave the view under the same name. Okay, so I just click here. Actually, I just click Save View. Okay, now what that's going to do is just update the view. And the cool thing about this is that let's say I made a mistake and I oversaved the definition of the view that I'd like. The views are versioned. Okay, anything that's going to be in the integrated Dremio catalogs, because it has those Git-Like features, creates a commit. So I can always roll back the catalog to a previous commit to undo any changes I made to unwanted changes I made to a view. Okay, so bottom line is, again, these are all going to be commits in that catalog. And again, I can actually see those catalogs real quick just to show you what I mean. If I click over here where it says Arctic catalogs, find the catalog we're working out of, which is this demos catalog. Okay, I can go over here and I can take a look at commits, and I can see that, hey, like that last view is where we updated the view, and I have a commit for each thing that we've been doing, and I can always roll back to that. Okay, so you have that visibility there. Okay. Cool. But yeah, so now when the analyst comes in and they want to query that view that we gave them access to, so we go 2024 Fab Dremio demo, and they go to employee name department. Okay, they're not going to see another view. They're just going to see the view that they originally had access to, and now that additional budget field is now available to them. Okay, so now they can begin working with it and deriving any additional views that they'd like. They can go back and now update their, their custom view to add the budget table or the budget column if they want, and they have that flexibility. So that was a pretty quick one. Okay, again, in a less unified analytic system. Okay, imagine if this was like a join between two different databases. Now I have to go back to those two different databases. Potentially to make these changes, I might have to go rewrite the SQL somewhere else. There might be some other steps involved. This might not be as simple as it was today. Again, this whole sort of simple, unified analytics platform built on top of your data lake really makes a lot of this stuff much, much, much easier. And that's sort of the point. Okay, the idea is to make your life easier. And as a byproduct of a lot of this, because you're making everyone's life easier, you're oftentimes going to need to run, you're going to have a lot less accidental queries, a lot less queries you need to run, a lot less storage you're going to need. So you're also going to end up saving a lot of money and having a much lower total cost of ownership, just not only just from the sheer change of form, but just from the better practices you'll have because you have a simpler way of doing things. So let's take a look at the next ticket. Okay, so now that we've taken care of that, let me copy that over to here. Wonderful. And now we have some new data. So now I have a ticket for some new data that's coming in, some new employees that need to be added, some new departments that need to be added. And bottom line is we're using the Dremio Lakehouse platform. So we want to take advantage of Dremio's data lakehouse management features, which include sort of advanced data ops features in the form of our integrated catalog, which has basically Git for data or Git-like semantics at the catalog level. It's going to allow us to do branching, tagging, merging. So we're going to take advantage of that to be able to isolate our ingestion so that way we publish all the changes to all the tables simultaneously through a multi-table transaction. So let's get on it. Okay, so in our next ticket, what we're going to be doing is ingesting some new data. Okay, so we're going to ingest some new data into our employee and department table. Luckily, I already have a script for this, so I'm going to head over to my scripts. Okay, I'm going to close out all these other tabs just to kind of get rid of some of the clutter there. Okay, I can have multiple tabs, which allows me to work on multiple queries at the same time, which is pretty neat. Okay, and again, if I close these tabs, each tab is automatically saved as a script, so that way I don't accidentally close one out and lose my work. So you have that, although again, it's always nice to clean them out every once in a while. Okay, so I always like to periodically just clean out all these extra scripts. But now what we're going to do now is we're going to do this. Okay, so I'll walk you through this just a moment. I'm just going to make sure I set the context to where I want it, which is in this Dremio demo folder. Okay, so just to walk you through what's going to happen here, basically what we're doing is something very much like Git. So if you've ever worked with code and Git, what happens there is oftentimes you can create what's called a branch. So while we're capturing those little changes in the catalog, those commits, sometimes you might want a different alternate path of commits that's isolated from what everybody else is seeing. So we can do that here. We can create a branch, and that's going to have a sort of separately tracked chain of commits that people who query the main production branch won't see. Okay, because basically all queries by default will go to the main branch. So what we're going to do here is we're going to show you what the count of the two tables are before we get started. Okay, then we're going to create a new branch, okay, which we're going to call, actually I want to give it a different name. So we're going to say Feb, we'll just call it Feb2, okay. And then that's just going to be the name of our branch. It could be anything. I'm just calling it that because that's just sort of where my head's at. Okay. So let me just change that everywhere we're going to need that to be changed. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Okay, good. So essentially what we're going to do is we're creating this new branch, Feb2, which is a branch off the main production branch that's inside specifically our demos catalog. Because again, I have multiple catalogs and the branches are specific to a catalog. And then what I'm doing is I'm saying for the rest of this query, or until I use this use branch statement, until the next use branch statement going forward, the context is set now to this branch in the catalog. So starting here, I'm in main, and then here I've switched the context to the branch, the Feb2 branch. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert some new records into the departments table. I'm going to insert some new records into the employees table. And then I'm going to query it while we're still in that branch so you can see that the numbers have gone up. So the count has gone up. So the data was ingested successfully. Then we're going to switch back over to the main branch. And then I'm going to run a count again. So you can see that on the main branch, it still has the old count. So we still don't see the change in the number of records for people who are running queries in production. Okay, so we've isolated those changes. And then once I'm comfortable, like I might run some validations, using things like Monte Carlo or Great Expectations or my own custom validating logic, something like that. Once I'm done, making sure that I'm happy with those changes, I can then do a merge statement and merge that branch in there. And then we'll see that now the main branch does reflect those additional entries. And again, while I'm showing it right here in the Dremio UI, anything you see that I do in the Dremio UI has supporting SQL, and that supporting SQL could be sent to Dremio via Dremio's REST API, through Dremio's ODBC JDBC connection, through Apache Aeroflight. So there's a lot of ways to get the directions to Dremio that gives you very robust ways of automating a lot of these things to really create some truly powerful data ops practices. So let's just run this query and see how it goes. So let's see here, put that there. Again, my context is set. I changed the names of the branches. Let me just do one last check to make sure I changed it everywhere it's needed. I think so. Let's hit run. Okay, the cool thing is, again, another thing that I didn't point out earlier is like I can run multiple queries here. Okay, so you can see every query kind of gets its own tab in the results. And this is really nice because unlike in other forms where I'd have to write one query at a time, wait for it to run, then write my next query, then wait for it to run, I can kind of stage a whole battery of things, and then I can isolate what I'm looking at in each one. So I can see that here, the first query, these first two queries where it's the counts of departments and employees, that departments has 5 records and employees has 10 records to start off with. Then we successfully created the branch. We successfully switched over to the branch. Okay, then I've inserted 5 more records into departments, then inserted 5 more records into employees. And notice that as I switch these queries, it actually highlights them over here. So again, these little quality of life touches that make the user experience much better. So again, if I click over here, see it's highlighting the query that this is the result for. Okay, then we see that from the branch, now departments is up to 10, so it has 5 more, and employees is up to 15, so it has 5 more. Okay, now I'm going to switch back to the main branch so we can see that we successfully did that. But then when I count back on the main branch, it's still only showing 5 for departments and still only showing 10 for employees. So that confirms that those changes that we just made were isolated, because we did see the count go up on the branch, but we're not seeing the count go up on the production branch. So then I'm going to run the merge statement. So here the merge has been successful. And then going forward, I go run those counts again, and now it's 10 and 15. That shows that the merge was successful. We have brought the changes to both tables simultaneously, and that's another really unique thing. We've just done what's called a multi-table transaction. Okay, because all changes across all tables in the catalog in that branch will all get published when I do that merge statement. So that allows me to make sure that the data is always consistent, that basically you see all the changes or none of the changes, okay, when we're moving sort of from, one job to another, which has some really powerful and profound implications on sort of how you can do certain workloads, because it's not a begin transaction, end transaction form. It's basically you can do whatever you want as many times on the branch, and then when you're done, you can merge all your changes at the end. So so you can see that when we take advantage of Dremio's data ops features, we can do some pretty cool things here. Okay, so let's take a look at what's left on our list of tickets. Okay, so now that that's done, our final ticket is we have someone who is building a dashboard on some weather data, and they want to increase the performance of that dashboard. Okay, now typically we would need to build like BI extracts and cubes that we'd have to then do further maintenance and work on, but Dremio is going to make this really easy to handle. So let's actually go bring this ticket over, and we'll talk about how we would address that going forward. So let's do that. Hello, and in our last ticket, basically someone had asked us that they want to create a BI dashboard using our weathers data set. So basically what I did is I landed this weathers data set back in our DBT practice or a Dremio demo folder. So you can see here's this weather data set. Okay, and if I run it, so you can see what kind of data is in there. Okay, you can see there's about 3,800 records in here. Dealing with weather in New York City. Now, typically when you're doing a BI dashboard, what you're really doing is you're running a lot of aggregation queries that have a lot of group bys that can sometimes take a little time to run, because you're maybe running a sum, but you're not only running the sum of all the precipitation, you're running it by, let's say, grouping it by zip code or something like that. That may take the query engine a little bit longer. But when you build a BI dashboard, you want the people who you bring these dashboards to be able to kind of turn knobs and adjust settings without having to wait minutes or too many seconds to see that change in the dashboard. So Dremio's got you. Okay, so basically, bottom line, what you would do is if you wanted to speed this up. So again, this would probably actually run pretty okay as is, but just to show you again, if you had like a huge data set, we're talking about hundreds of millions of records, what you can do is we'll click here on edit. So we're going to edit the data set. Okay, and that's going to take us to this screen right here. Okay, and you'll see there's a section called reflections. Now, a little bit about what reflections is think of reflections are a mechanism that sort of replaces the need for things like materialized views. That's what raw reflections do. They kind of replace the need for materialized views. They're like that, but better. Okay, and just to kind of give you a quick tour, essentially, if I did have a situation where I need to kind of help someone have faster raw queries on the raw rows of data, I could turn on raw reflections, and that would essentially materialize a copy of the data. Now, I would usually use this if, let's say, I have like a MySQL database or a Postgres database connected, and I don't want it to hit that Postgres database every single time it hits that query. Instead, what I'd rather it do is going to materialize an iceberg table that matches the table on your data lake and actually maintains it. So you don't have to worry about future updates. It'll update it on a cadence. And essentially, when it notices that queries come in for that Postgres table, instead of scanning Postgres, it'll scan the data lake version, which will be a lot faster and not interfere with whatever else is going on your Postgres database. So you don't have to worry about the scaling issues you might have, the limitations of horizontal scaling you may have with traditional databases. Okay, now you have unlimited horizontal scaling thanks to Dremio. But Also really cool with raw reflections is I can go in here and I can customize how those reflections are constructed. I can sit there and say which columns are included in that materialization, how is it sorted, how is it partitioned. So this way it can lean even more deeply into the particular queries that it's going to run. And a lot of this is a lot easier because you don't have to kind of guess what the right choice is. We now have a reflection recommender that's built into Dremio that'll monitor your queries and make reflection recommendations for you. But we're talking about BI dashboards. So in that case, what we care more about is these aggregation reflections. So these are going to be more like BI extracts and cubes. Okay, so basically what would happen to accelerate BI dashboards, you would create BI extracts and cubes that pre-aggregate, all these group by statements ahead of time. So that way you can get those answers faster. But usually would require you to manually update them. You would end up sometimes having out-of-memory issues. There was a lot of complications with BI extracts and cubes, and they weren't as flexible a solution. But aggregation reflections, all that is handled for you. So making sure that the memory is managed, making sure this thing stays up to date, and it's in a form that works really fast. That's all taken away. All you get to do is specify, hey, what am I optimizing for? So like, hey, what are my measures? So I can be like, just adding some random measures here just to illustrate. I can say, hey, I want to optimize for these measures and these dimensions. Okay. And so, for example, if I wanted to figure out, hey, what's the sum of precipitation by station, I can do that now because I have dimension. It's going to optimize. It's going to basically do those measurements for precipitation grouped by each of these things. Okay, and have all those pre-calculated. And then what I do is I just click here and save. And now what it's going to do, it is going to start building that materialization on my data lake. And again, it'll update it on a cadence for me, so I don't have to worry about maintaining it. It'll just kind of work. And then essentially what happens now when that BI dashboard is going to start hitting this data set, Dremio will intelligently swap it out and say, hey, you know what? I already have something that's going to give me these aggregations a lot faster. Let me use that instead. So instead of the analyst having to know about all these different versions of the same data set, Dremio takes the intelligent effort of swapping and updating the queries to query the right construct or the right physical representation of the data. Instead of the analyst having to know about 10, 20 different versions of the data and having to hopefully choose the right one. Okay, so you see it's been created, footprint 12 by 10. So now if I were to go to my BI tool, in this case I have Superset open, and I will be creating a blog soon about using Dremio with Superset. Okay, I can go over here and I've already connected Dremio to my Superset instance here. So now what I can do is I can go register the data set. So I'm going to go add this data set in here. So in this case, it's going to be in my Dremio database. This is going to be inside of my demos. So let me go find that specific folder in demos. So it's going to be demos, feb, Dremio demo. So good. And then we'll take a look at the data sets I have in there. There's the weather table. Okay. And now I can begin constructing so I'll create this data set. Simple as that. Okay, and now I can begin building charts. So I'll just create a new chart here. Okay, and again, we can say, hey, I'm looking for precipitation. Okay, let me try that again. Or I just click right over here. So I can drop precipitation here. Say, hey, I'm looking for, like, let's say the sum. And we'll just use the count for now. Just keep it simple. Okay, save. Okay, and sort of sending. We can just do something like that. Create a chart. Okay. And again, you can kind of tinker around with this and kind of get the chart that you want. But the idea is that it's going to change real fast. So if I were to swap this out with, let's say, snow, okay, then I can update the chart. And you see it's going to be done pretty fast. And then if I head over to demos, if I go back to my Dremio and I click here on the jobs page, I can see which jobs are coming into my Dremio cluster. And I can see that these queries were accelerated by those reflections. So you see this little lightning bolt. That means, hey, the style of the query was actually accelerated by using reflections. And because of that, the query itself, the query execution took less than a second. Okay, so you get these really fast dashboards, so I can sit there and tinker around with what I want that dashboard to be all day, and I'm going to get pretty responsive feedback, so I'm not spending all day editing that. And another really nice feature to be aware of is that Dremio has even deeper integrations with different BI tools. So again, pretty much any BI tool that supports JDBC, ODBC connections, you can kind of connect to, like we just saw with Superset. But on top of that, if I go open up that weather data set again, okay, you'll see right over here there's a Tableau button and a Power BI button that allows me to kind of directly connect the data set to one of those tools if I have one of those tools on my computer. So that way I get even quicker, just create a live connection right to the data set. So that way it sends those queries directly to Dremio as you tinker around with your dashboard. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this demonstration of Dremio. Let's go. Okay, cool. That ticket has been completed. So we have completed all of our tickets. Okay, and so notice that basically I can just really quickly address a lot of these data engineering pains that oftentimes in other systems, when you're dealing with multiple different data systems that have different permissions, it can get really complicated and really difficult really quick. But with Dremio, it's really just sort of, I can see all my data everywhere in one place, govern it in one place, deliver it from one place, and just really have a much more unified data warehouse-like feel without necessarily having to lock my data anywhere in particular. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this demonstration. I'll see you all later. And again, go check out the Dremio Lakehouse platform.